Congressmember Barbara Lay, it's Amy. Hi. Your thoughts?
How are you? Well, I'm here with a sense of gratitude and a sense of humility, and just thankful for those foot soldiers and the great leaders who led the movement so that I could be the 100th member of Congress. And I'm also thinking about the work that's left to do. Got so much to do when you look at Ferguson, New York, Oakland, when you look at systemic institutional racism, when you look at what needs to be done. It's the young people, once again, who are going to protest and who are going to make members of Congress do the right thing.
Raphael Warnock, Senior Pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta.
I saw you at Troy Davis's funeral.
Yes.
How does that story...
I actually delivered the eulogy.
How does that, and what was your message there? And how does the issue of the death penalty, who gets put to death, who doesn't, who's imprisoned, who isn't, fit into this story today, 50 years after Bloody Sunday in Selma?
Well, one of the striking things is that if there is a sector of American society that is worse and more rabidly racist than it was during Dr. King's lifetime, it is the criminal justice system. America warehouses 25% of the world's prisoners, although we're only 5% of the world's population. The death penalty is a capstone of that larger problem of deep disparities in sentencing. Getting sentenced to death has very often to do with the race of the victim. And so we have to continue to fight the good fight on this. Our beloved nation is almost alone in continuing to exercise this brutal and unusual and inhumane punishment. But I think there are hopeful signs. There were those of us who stood this week to argue in Georgia that a woman named Kelly Kissendamer should not be executed. And so far, that execution has been at least placed on hold. There was this issue apparently with the lethal injection being cloudy, which was interesting. And the reason we're having this problem is we're having a hard time getting the toxic compounds necessary to kill people in the name of the state. And that's because most of the rest of the world understands that this kind of practice has no place in 21st century civilized society. It is state-sanctioned mob violence.
So this is Judge U.W. Clement, who was a federal judge and before that long-time civil rights lawyer.
Your thoughts about 50 years ago, Bloody Sunday, what people were marching for, what they got bloodied for, and where we are today, Judge?
Well, I think that much of the meaning of what happened 50 years ago has been lost in the fact that 2 years ago, the Supreme Court took away the heart of the Voting Rights Act. And so it's important for us to be here today to remind ourselves that that fight is as important today as it was a half century ago.
Talk about the importance of the courts. I mean, they're activists on the ground. You're a judge.
Well, I guess it was Charles Evans Hughes who once said that the Constitution means at any given point in time only what 5 members of the Supreme Court says that it means. And we have seen in the last quarter century a Supreme Court as reactionary as the Tony Court, which decided the Dred Scott decision. This court today is as amorous of states' rights, which we thought we had fought a great civil war over, thought we'd settled that issue. But this Supreme Court has resurrected states' rights, and it's now a constitutional principle. And so when you turn it back over to the states, then we see the kinds of things that we have seen in terms of restrictions on the right to vote, restrictions that have been imposed since the Shelby County case, much similar to the restrictions that were imposed 50 years ago.
Would you call the Supreme Court today a Jim Crow court?
Well, I would say that this Supreme Court is, yes, it's a flamethrower, and it is, in my judgment, the worst Supreme Court in terms of civil rights since, as I said, 1857, the decision that caused the Civil War.
And Ted Shaw, would you like to say something?
There's such a fear among many people in this country about the demographics of change, and it's causing them to literally act in ways that are mad. I don't mean angry mad, I mean like insane mad, and it's infected our politics, and race is very much at the center of a lot of these issues. They're afraid of not being in the majority anymore, even though they'll still have disproportionate power. So, I think we're in a dangerous time, in a dangerous place. The Voting Rights Act is still important. The right to vote, sacred. This is political disempowerment that's followed from Shelby County, or potential political disempowerment. So the struggle continues. It may change in some ways, but it continues.
That was Ted Shaw, now at the University of North Carolina Center for Civil Rights. Coming up, John Lewis, President Obama, and Diane Nash.